Progen, one of the latest supercar manufacturers to hit the streets of Los Santos. But what cars did they have, and where did their designs hail from? I'm CoyneDawg, and this is the Progen Story. Progen were born into the GTA universe as Rockstars' answer to McLaren. Introduced with the release of Ill-Gotten Gains Part 2 in summer 2015, giving us a vehicle that at the time was pretty groundbreaking, the T20. T20 came into the game as the most expensive supercar at that time, and even today, the price tag far exceeds the vast majority of regular vehicles available and is perhaps a little bit expensive. In terms of the car itself, the T20 draws most of its design inspiration from the McLaren P1. There is also similarities with other vehicles, with the rear diffuser and exhaust layout being similar to that of the Ferrari 488, but I personally think that's just a coincidence. It would make sense after all for the brand of Progen to have their vehicles based around the McLaren brand. All in all, the T20 is a wonderful vehicle. Whilst not as fast as some of the newest supercars, it's still competitive, and it's one of the most rewarding to drive in my opinion, and this is just the start of the story. Bursting onto the scene in summer 2016 with the Cunning Stunt update, we have the Tyrese, and with it came the controversial downforce statistic. From a performance perspective, unfortunately the Tyrese is a little bit of a disappointment, particularly with the recent changes to downforce that Rockstar have made. But let's look past that and look at the car itself, starting with the sound. This car in my opinion has one of the best sounding engine noises in the game, with something quite unique to almost all other vehicles. In terms of its appearance, it is heavily based around the McLaren F1 GT, better known as the Longtail. This variation was developed off the back of the regular F1 GTR to try to keep up with the changing face of the GT Championship way back in 1997, where we saw the likes of Mercedes introducing purpose-built racing cars into the championship. The Tyrese does a really good job of showing that inspiration without being a complete copy, and clearly draws inspiration from other GT cars at that time. In terms of the way it drives, it is in my view a nice handling car. It's just a shame that it was never quite on top pace, especially with the price you pay for this vehicle, which is in excess of $2 million. The third vehicle released to us from Progen is the ALOT GTB, which also has a custom variation which we're going to cover here. Now the ALOT GTB was given to us with the import-export DLC of Christmas 2016, and the car immediately presented a problem. The custom variation of this car is actually slower than its non-custom counterpart. At the time, people speculated that this was perhaps a bug, but given that it's never been fixed and it has in fact been made worse with the recent downforce changes, it does appear to have been an intentional move from Rockstar. In my opinion, the custom variation you pay for is in fact to gain visual customization for the vehicle rather than any sort of performance improvement, and I'm personally okay with that. I sometimes feel that people forget that not everyone buys cars to race. Some just buy them to look at or to show off with their friends in free roam. It doesn't always have to be about speed. The ALOT GTB's appearance is heavily based around the McLaren 570 series, sharing much of the front end and bodywork. The rear end takes design inspiration from a number of different McLaren vehicles with no clear single design used, and this is perhaps the most noticeable area of difference between the standard ALOT and the custom variation. Overall, I am a big fan of this vehicle. It's a good looking car. The ALOT GTB itself is perfectly viable to use in supercar races if you're a skilled driver, it just isn't quite there on top pace. So the final vehicle we have available is sadly also the most disappointing. It is of course the Progen GP1. Now the GP1 was given to us with the Special Vehicle Races DLC in March of 2017, and it's supposed to be Rockstar's answer to the McLaren F1. On first impressions from the official screenshots, it appeared they'd done a good job. The GP1 from the front is an almost identical replica of the F1 and it's really well done. Unfortunately, you then go around the back of this car and that replica is completely ruined. Obviously Rockstar cannot completely copy the design of a real world vehicle, however in this case rather than come up with a similar but still beautiful alternative, they came up with a really horrible design. A few nice modifications can make it look a little better, but to me the scaling of the back end seems wrong, and that ruins the whole look of the car for me. After all, when driving these cars you spend most of your time looking at the rear chase camera. Unfortunately, the performance is no better than the looks, and it's a real shame Rockstar missed the opportunity they had with this car to give us something really special. And that was the story of Progen so far. But it leaves one question, and I want you guys to answer this one. What comes next?